Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with something really quite exciting, as we've got my very first SH MonsterArts Godzilla. So far, up until this point, the only SH MonsterArts figure I have ever had was the Kong figure, and that one sits in storage because even though it was pretty nice, you know, it wasn't something I was super blown away by. But this Godzilla, when I had seen it revealed, I knew I wanted it because I grew up loving Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and of course, in general, the version of Godzilla that you see throughout the course of the 70s, and specifically, of course, 1972, which you can see is this version. I've always been such a massive fan of that type of Godzilla. It's the type of Godzilla that I would consistently see all the time on those, you know, Saturday monster marathons and stuff, and that's where I grew up loving Godzilla. And of course, I was really kind of drawn to this version of Godzilla. So once I saw it revealed, I really wanted to get it in my hands. So I'm really excited to actually check out my very first SH MonsterArts Godzilla today. But you can see the figure's box looks really good. I'm actually a big fan of the box art and everything, and the entire layout. I think the box actually looks a lot nicer than what Haya gives us. So a plus as far as that goes. But the box art has a nice image here of the Godzilla on the front. If you turn it to the side, you can see some slash marks here, as well as again the SH MonsterArts logo and Godzilla 1972. And then if we turn it to the back, you can again see some more images of Godzilla. I really like the fact that he has like that bloody face right there, which is again something that you do see in the film. One of the reasons I think why like drew me to the figure immediately was that. So really excited to see that on the figure. But again, overall, it's really quite nice. Definitely a nice box. Hopefully the figure will be as nice as I'm expecting it to be, so let's pop it out of the box and check it out. So here is our Godzilla out of the packaging now, and definitely looking really cool. And then we've also got the head again that looks pretty okay. It doesn't look quite as nice as it did in the promotional images as far as like that injury, the wound to the face, but it looks pretty decent. But the figure itself is kind of interesting to me because I've never held an MonsterArts Godzilla in my hands, so I wasn't prepared for how different the figure would feel compared to a NECA or Haya Toys Godzilla. Like, it has a very different feel to it, almost like, and I don't mean to say this in any sort of an insulting way, but it's probably going to come out that way. It has kind of a cheap feel to it when it comes to like how light, and I mean the figure as a whole doesn't feel super light, but it feels really hollow, which is weird. I don't know, it has like a strange feel to it. Like I said, I've never had one of these before, so I'm discovering all of the fun aspects of MonsterArts that you guys have probably been enjoying for years for the very first time right now. But the articulation, I will say, does seem extremely smooth, so that's a plus for the figure at least. But overall, it is definitely a nice looking figure, so let's jump straight to a closer look at it and we'll check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of Godzilla, I think it looks really good, especially when it comes to the overall appearance of Godzilla from this time, from this film specifically. I think they definitely captured Godzilla's likeness really nicely, and I don't think that's something that SH MonsterArts, in my opinion, has ever really had problems with, is capturing the on-screen accuracy. I feel like they've always been pretty good at that. Even though I haven't actually owned any of their figures, I have seen a lot of their stuff over the years. I've kind of been like an admirer from afar, and I have seen a lot of their stuff. I've just never really owned it. But overall, I feel like the likeness of Godzilla is captured perfectly with this figure. The sculpt and fine detail as well, as you get nice and close and look at it, I think it looks really good. Definitely looks like the suit that was used at the time. And when it comes to the skin texture as well, you can see the jaw is, of course, articulated. Once you look inside the mouth, you can see Godzilla's teeth. They're all painted really quite nicely. You can see the gums are painted as well. Everything has kind of that saliva-y look in there, you know, a nice wet look. You can see the tongue in there, but it's a little hard to really get in there and see it. It's a little dark, but it looks really good what we can see. You can kind of make out the shine there of the inside of the mouth on the upper side as well. The jaw also articulates pretty smoothly. It does feel a little loose, but for the most part seems to work pretty nicely. You can see as we lead up, the eyes are also nicely painted. Same deal for the other side, though you can see they are a little googly-eyed because they are not placed perfectly so that they are looking forward. We do have the nostrils right here, and as you continue to move around through the course of Godzilla, you can see again the back here where the spines start to pick up, look pretty decent. We have like a silver tone for the spines here on the back, you know, the early spines picking up. For the color of Godzilla, though, I will say that they've added a lot of green to Godzilla, and I don't really remember there being green on Godzilla in the movie, and I have seen it tons of times, but it's been quite a while, so maybe it's something I need to revisit at some point, and I'll try to see if in fact that greenish tone is on Godzilla. And I didn't see it really in the promotional images either, but here on the figure in hand there is a large amount of greenish tones mixing with the black tones of Godzilla. But as you move back into the neck, again the skin texture does look quite nice in the neck area as well, and you do have a few articulated joints. It looks like we've got one here, and one here as you move down, so you can articulate the head and neck of Godzilla really quite nicely. And again, as I said, the articulation is really smooth. You don't have a whole lot of mobility, it seems, in the neck of Godzilla, but definitely some okay articulation, some okay mobility. Definitely could create some really cool poses with that area of articulation. As you continue to move along the spines, again, you can see that we have that silverish tone, very metallic, shiny silverish tone following through the course of the spines. You do have the black kind of centered through some of the larger spines of Godzilla. And as you move through, you can see the greens meshing with the black tones here of the body. Again, you can see, like, right there, see how the arm just feels like it's like, I don't know, maybe it just has like a cheap feel to it. It's weird. But the articulation in the shoulder works pretty nicely. You can see it goes forward and back, also out away from the body. You do have articulation in the elbow, which you can see above and below the elbow right there, to add even more mobility in that area. And then as you lead out, you seem to have, yes, we have wrist articulation as well, which can move pretty nicely. And again, you can swivel these areas just like I expected. As you lead into the hand, you can see the hand sculpt looks quite nice, and the nails of the hands are actually painted really nicely. I love that they start out with a dark brown and transition very smoothly to a lighter tone as you lead out toward the tips, and they have a nice gloss coat to them, so they shine. Really nice touch in that area. As you move down, you can see a few more articulated areas here. We've got one right here, which is interesting. That's not an area you often see articulation in, Godzilla figures like this. So that is nice to see that little bit of extra articulation. So it doesn't seem like it does a whole lot, maybe a little bit of movement there. You've got another spot right here. Again, pretty much the typical, you can really see it actually here in the stomach region. You can really see those different articulated joints as you move down. Pretty much your standard articulation in any figure in that area. You never really get too much mobility, I would think, but you do have a little bit. You can see, again, it moves a little bit here and there, forward and back and stuff. I don't want to mess with it too much, again, considering this figure does kind of have a little bit of a cheap feel to it. I don't know how durable these MonsterArts figures are. But as you move down again into the hip region, you can see the leg moves forward and back. You can actually see how it kind of operates here. Like the leg actually comes out really far from the body, and there's this little area in here that kind of pops up to show the skin connecting, which I think was nice on their part, a nice idea, but it's a little bit awkward looking, I will say that. But again, you can see how there's now this big gaping open hole here when you position the leg, but that does allow you to have the leg in a very interesting position where it can go super, super high. I think when it comes to the actual posability of articulated figures, I feel like SH MonsterArts might win because the articulation is just really, really smooth and allows you some pretty crazy ways to pose your Godzilla. Again, definitely giving you a lot when it comes to the mobility of the leg. Look, that leg can go anywhere and everywhere, which is really impressive. As you move down, again, the skin texture pretty much looks the same through the entire course of the body of Godzilla. You do have an articulated joint, of course, in the knee, here forward and back. You can see on the lower part, same deal, if I can keep that leg still. Same deal for the upper side, there you go. So that works really nicely. Again, you've got more articulation down here in the ankle. You have like a little floater, it seems, right here. And then the ability to kind of move the foot up and down. And then swivel left and right, pretty much twist it side to side. It can go all over the place. You have much more obvious greens down here in the foot as well. Again, pretty much the same tone of green we've seen through the body, but it's really strong following along the toes right here on this foot. Not so much on the other foot, though. You can see the other foot has it, but not nearly the way you see it over on this foot. It looks like he almost has like a moss or an infection of some kind on this foot. But you can see the nails look pretty nice down here. Again, you can see they're painted the same way, where they start out with a darker tone, lead out to a lighter tone, which does look really quite nice. And then we move back up, you can see the spines continuing to follow along the back of Godzilla as you lead out into the tail. A few of these seem to be slightly out of place, but as you move out into the tail, I'm not even going to begin to try to count the articulated joints, but as you can see, they run the entire length of the tail, and there is a ton of them. And you can see, again, when it comes to articulation in the tail of a Godzilla, I don't think it can really get much better or more impressive than that. I feel like when it comes to stop motion, if you're going to create some sort of a stop motion Godzilla, like, man, this is probably the best and smoothest articulation that you'll find on almost any figure. Maybe next to like Rixan Custom Toys, because their figures are actually kind of similar when it comes to the amount of articulation and poses you can get out of those. Pretty similar to this, but the Rixan Custom Toys is more of a wire articulation, whereas SH MonsterArts is definitely not. However, it is still super, super smooth. I'm very impressed with the mobility of the tail. Like, that can go pretty much anywhere I want it to go perfectly. But again, you have the same sculpt as far as the skin texture goes moving through the course of the tail. Same type of paintwork, again, with the variations of blacks and greens. So the Godzilla is definitely really nicely done. I feel like even though he does have that kind of cheap feel to him in certain areas, it is still a really, really cool figure and definitely very, very nicely articulated. And then again, we have the alternate head, which is the same head as our Godzilla, except now it has the injury here. You can see the kind of bloody appearance for our Godzilla moving through the face. If you've seen the film, you'll know that this look is, in my opinion, pretty iconic for Godzilla, or at least this Godzilla. So that looks really, really cool. And again, the articulated jaw and everything, just like we saw on the other version. Definitely a really nice addition is this alternate head. As far as a size goes on our Godzilla, for a length from the snout to the tail, about 12¼ inches or around 31 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the head, I'd say about 6¼ inches or around 16 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon in the Collect A Human Being next to our Godzilla, and you can see he does have a pretty nice size to him. You know, he's not gigantic, he's not massive, but he is still pretty nicely sized as a whole, so maybe a little bit smaller than your average like NECA or Hiya Toys release, I think. Definitely smaller than Hiya, no doubt about that, but for another comparison to further give us an idea of that, there is the Hiya Toys Godzilla King of the Monsters Godzilla next to the SH MonsterArts 1972 Godzilla, and you can see again that obviously the Hiya Toys version is a good bit larger, definitely overall a lot more impressive in size. I think it's also more impressive in paint quality. The overall paint on the Godzilla from Hiya just seems more lifelike and realistic, though I feel like the paintwork on the MonsterArts version is just a little bit less impressive. Like, I don't know how to really explain it. It just looks more action figure-like, whereas the Hiya Toys version looks more lifelike. But again, that could all just come down to the way that Godzilla was colored in 1972 compared to the way Godzilla is colored now. Obviously, Godzilla looks a whole lot more realistic. I wish I had a Hiya Toys version of the 1972 Godzilla so I can compare those two together to really give us an accurate idea as far as who would be the more appealing company here. But I will say again, honestly, they both have their ups and downs, and this SH MonsterArts Godzilla has absolutely surprised me with how nice it really is. Now, I don't have too many Godzillas from NECA, but we do have the King of the Monsters NECA Godzilla here as well. And, you know, a large portion of my Godzillas, when it comes to whatever I have from NECA, they stay in box. I've never opened them. And that means I can't really bring them in to compare. But if you happen to have the King of the Monsters Godzilla from NECA, this one here will be a nice comparison and a nice figure to stand in next to our MonsterArts Godzilla to show you that they are pretty much the same size. And just in case you are not a big-time Godzilla collector and you don't have any of those other figures which are a little pricey at times to get a hold of, I wanted to bring in one of the cheaper options out there, which is the Evolved Godzilla from Godzilla X Kong from Playmates next to our SH MonsterArts Godzilla, just to give you an idea that these figures again are also very, very similar in size. So honestly, I am really quite impressed. Again, having my first chance to really get an SH MonsterArts Godzilla in hand, I'm almost afraid of the fact that I really quite like it. Because, you know, at this point, I was so dead set on only purchasing Hiya Toys stuff, for the most part. You know, I've been collecting that line for a little while now. I don't buy everything they release, especially when they continue to release so many repaints. I'm kind of phasing out of all of those repaints. But, I was honestly pretty much dead set on only collecting Hiya Toys stuff because I felt like the Hiya Toys was a higher quality. And, you know, I see a lot of this stuff online when it comes to people posting in different groups. I often follow a lot of Godzilla groups. I don't really post too often, but I follow the groups. And a lot of people are always saying how much greater Hiya is than SH MonsterArts. But actually now having an SH MonsterArts figure here in hand to compare with what I get from Hiya. Again, I will say they're very different style figures, and I don't know that a comparison between the two is really that fair. However, if I were to have to pick, if I had to absolutely choose between one or the other, I would say I'd probably still go with Hiya Toys, only because I feel like you get more quality for your money, because the SH MonsterArts figures are just so expensive continuously. Like this one here was $100, and especially if you're going to buy them from third-party sellers, you'll pay through the roof. But, you know, even when a Godzilla figure first is coming out from one of these companies, I still feel like the prices are a good bit higher than they probably need to be. I feel like Bandai is definitely just price gouging these, because when you look at the Hiya Toys releases and you see how impressive those figures are, and they only cost like $50 to $60, obviously you're paying double that sometimes for these SH MonsterArts figures, and that's just really not that, I would say, fair, I guess, because they're definitely way too expensive. But that being said, the quality of the figure, though it does have a cheap feel, and I feel like if I happen to drop it, you know, it could potentially break, whereas if I drop a Hiya release, I feel like that one would survive. The thing that I really like about this figure is the articulation is insanely, insanely smooth. You know, you get a lot of figures like this when it comes to articulated joints that aren't like wire releases, you know, wire articulation. A lot of the time the articulation will be really stiff, and I don't know if this is how all SH MonsterArts figures are, but the articulation is unbelievably smooth on this figure and can allow pretty much any and every pose you could possibly imagine for a Godzilla. So that is a massive plus for this figure. I think the sculpt is also super nicely done. The detail is extremely crisp. It looks exactly like the suit did used in the film. I feel like they definitely captured every ounce, whether it be the skin texture or just generally the overall screen accuracy. They've captured it perfectly on this Godzilla. The paintwork, though, isn't really that great. I feel like the paint on this just looks a little off, you know, especially with the greenish tones. I don't personally remember so many greenish tones on Godzilla from this film, but maybe I just need to revisit it. It's been a while. But the paintwork in some of the areas, like the green, is just super thick and ugly looking, especially down on the feet. So that does take away from the figure, I think, and definitely helps to make it look a little bit iffy. But then other areas look really good, like the paint on the inside of the mouth and then the nails and stuff. That all looks really nice. And again, as a whole, I would say they've captured the likeness of this Godzilla pretty darn nicely. The paint's not the greatest, but the articulation more than makes up for the slight mishaps in paintwork. And of course, the addition of the alternate head is absolutely awesome. So if you are interested in picking one of these up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Big Bad Toy Store, because that is where I purchased mine. So make sure you check that link, go grab this absolutely awesome Godzilla, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.